are these people?
I figured I'd bring this, which is a nice thread from our friend Kit Klarenberg, and it's several articles combined into one. And he says, yes, I understand that Putin does have the digital ruble in which financial institutions in the West can't exploit. All right, but it's still
there's some
CBDCs.
issues with. Yeah, people forget that like Russia's got some capitalism going on now. So,
but
Putin, and I don't know if you remember, Putin's been WEF member and
he's never been a communist. He was never he never admitted or declared himself to be anything but a capitalist.
I mean, I think he didn't have a choice when it was USSR when he was at the KGB, but whatever.
Yeah, but he was personally still a capitalist as a KGB agent under a communist system.
Right. So, not that he hasn't done plenty of good things for the country, technically socialist, keeps a lot of social programs, and the people give him overall approval ratings of like what?
90%?
Like 80%. Yeah, like something crazy like that.
But I don't believe polls. Polls are all rigged, and who knows? But it seems that the Americans that go there certainly have nothing but good things to say about it.
Yep.
So Kit Klarenberg,
also very good at judo, very good judakan. Good for you, Putin. You know,
like Olympic level, right?
Yep.
Competed, I believe, at one point. But Kit Klarenberg is an Indie Media Award honoree who also writes for the Grey Zone UK. He and Alex Rubinstein do Active Measures. He also has his own blog that's called
Rubinstein and Klarenberg.
That's right, but also
attorneys at law.
Global Delinquents is Kit's personal blog at kitklarenberg.com. He starts with this thread talking about Ukraine, and he says, I surmise that the key reason that Brits can't give up on the proxy war is that they're terrified of the scale of their involvement and huge responsibility for Ukraine's destruction being exposed publicly.
Yep.
It's coming out at some point.
They want to keep their head in the sand.
Pretty
much.
Sure. All of Kiev's most embarrassing military blunders were British operations. So let's dive in. And I just thought
that the U.S. coups and stuff that were complicit in there too. But
again, the Kursk Bridge, all right, as he's written about extensively, the Kursk invasion was British planned, armed, directed, and trained. This was publicly admitted. It was supposed to normalize overt British involvement in the proxy war in the hope that Germans and Americans would follow suit, and that failed miserably. And there's an article here tracking that. Kursk will likely go in failure, will likely in the future be considered one of the biggest military blunders in modern history. So too will Krinky, a lunatic suicide mission that saw wave after wave of ill-equipped Ukrainians get murdered under relentless Russian fire to seize a village, and that failed. Okay? And there's one of the headlines talking about that. Ever fascinating history legends produced a stunning post-mortem on this operation, which has never officially promoted, formally named, or publicized much beyond media reports on how it meant almost certain death for Ukrainians sent there. An awful death in that. All right, so there's a video there, attachment with some receipts. He says Ukrainian Pravda has now published very detailed and long account of how the Krinky cataclysm was planned and played out with UAF chiefs, that's the British Air Force, keeping it running despite the fact that it was very clearly early on an unwinnable waste of time, energy, and human life. So, and that's from a Ukrainian rag itself. I can't believe Zelensky hasn't ordered the writers to go to jail yet. All right. He says it's an utterly damning appraisal, but the most interesting parts reveal that the Krinky catastrophe was proposed by the British, who then trained and armed Ukrainian Marines for this purpose in the UK. And he's got the receipts from the article translated into English that the UK, again, together with stakeholders on the Ukrainian side and the Marines, the UK has been promoting the idea that the Marines should leave the wooded areas in the Donetsk and start conducting operations on the water. All right, so he's got all of this listed out here. As the gray zone has repeatedly exposed, British intel has been concocting and carrying out all sorts of insane escalatory plans for the Ukraine proxy, much of it maritime related. And he says, I bet you Prevail Partners was training these Marines. And that's a British specialist risk advisory company. I'm guessing they're probably a cutout for British intel or former British intel agents or operatives. He says,
and Klarenberg had a article recently about things similar to that, right? British military cutouts training Ukrainians,
yes,
which is why he's bringing that up, right? But in it, it said that, like, you know, this will cutting edge technology will help, you know, defeat the outdated, you know, Russian, like whatever. And it's like this idea that plenty of NATO countries had, mainly because we propagandized everyone into like believing that like Russia's this backwoods using old 80s, but you know, like, no, they're modern equipped military.
Yes.
Like they have hypersonic missiles. Like, you know, like we have to get over the idea. It's like just because the gun has wood furniture doesn't mean it's an antique. The bullets still go boom. You know.
Well, it's like, also that, you know, from the 60s myth that you know the Russian army, the military is a husk of itself. It's a massive shell
and
that can
like
be made that
comical,
was too big and rusted out tanks to be maintained.
Corrupt.
Stuff that was falling apart. And I mean, that was the narrative for decades here.
Drunken, vodka-soaked, you know, like...
Yeah, like in Spies Like Us.
Not how it is. Right. Yep.
I remember.
Yeah.
So he continues that if British soldiers were dispatched on a suicide mission like Krinky, the officials who signed off on it, planned it, and kept it running for almost a year would be court-martialed.
Yeah.
But it was Britain's Ukrainian shock troops instead, so guilty parties are safe for now. Britain has been at the forefront of the push to allow Ukraine to strike deep inside Russian territory with Western weapons. They finally got the permission. Ukraine did that and got ICBM'd or MRBM'd. Your move, London and Kiev. Your move. All right, and this is here's how all financial fuses lead to London, talking about, you know, just how much they're invested in this. All right,
that who did that? Is that Latouche? Did that comic? Click the image and open it up a little more.
It's cut off.
Can't see the signature.
No. Tom Luongo is the writer
person. It might be his.
I don't want to look at.
Yeah.
I don't want to click on that because I don't know what's there.
No worries.
But
good for you, Tom, if that's you. Good for you, Latouche, if that's you.
But it's just fuck around and find out time, you know.
Yeah.
Again, this guy does not look very happy, and I wouldn't be either if I were him.
Could he have more forehead? You know, I feel like that's where he keeps his power.
See, but I feel like he needs to ditch the comb over at this point. Like he's not fooling anyone.
Sure, just go full bald.
Just go Telly Savalas.
Super Bond. Could you look more Bond villainesque? I think that's the thing. Is like
$1 million.
People get so afraid because he looks like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's propaganda crap too, but We've probably been making Bond villains look like, Russian diplomats forever.
Yes, the RAV.
Yeah.
It was Russians, Arabs, and Vietnamese, I think it was.
Vietnamese. Yeah.
Yeah, that was how they described it in Thank You for Smoking. I remember they talked about Rob Lowe's character talked about RAVs. I was like, that's the first time I heard that term. But that's funny.
Or, Bosley is available, Mr. Putin. We can work this out. So can you imagine him like full mullet, Get the full mullet going on.
He could resemble number two. Number two?
He could go like Boz of Pete and Boz,
Dude, I love those guys. We have to
clean
start
up top, mop in the back.
If you have not heard Pete and Boz, okay?
We should record a few reactions. There's some new pieces off their album.
Holy crap, they're so good. They're so good. You know what? One night when we're doing a uncensored boats, we'll play some Pete and Boz over there because they're so good.
Yep.
Oh my God. They're like 80 and they spit. They're just pretty good. Oh my word. Talking about stuff like that definitely is why we will never be remonetized. My guess is on YouTube. So if you do appreciate the reporting and journalism like this and stories like this, let us keep the lights on, keep doing this. Please join that wall of fame if you haven't already. All these awesome people already have. Easiest way to do that is Cash App. If you've got that, $ Indie News Network, INDIE. All right, Ko-fi.com, PayPal, Patreon. There's also INNnewsletter.com you see going across the scroll. All right, there you can support that with a monthly